Alright guys, what is dynamic loft? So dynamic loft, simply put, is the amount of loft you have on the club face at impact. So a lot of you guys are going to err to the side of adding loft like such. So again, let's take the analogy of a water hose. So if you had a hose and you were spraying it at a certain speed, there's an optimal trajectory or an optimal amount that you should raise it up in the air for it to go a certain distance. Now when you start increasing the speed, that same height probably is not going to go as far, so you're going to want to lower it slightly. So it's kind of the same thing with the dynamic loft. So a lot of you guys, let's just say, give an easy example, let's say you swing your 7-iron at 70 miles per hour or 75, maybe that's close to the average, I'm not quite sure, but let's just use that for an example. So if you swing a 7-iron at 75 miles per hour, I'm not going to want to see you lean it like a tour pro, like such. They swing fast enough to where when they lean it like that, they can still keep the ball in the air because they're swinging faster and generating a little bit more speed, and the ball's going to go further for them that way. Now for you guys, the same thing goes. I don't want to see too much loft as well, or else you're going to hit it so high you're not going to get any distance. So I'd like to say if you swing a 7-iron at 75 miles per hour, I think a good number for you guys is basically having that shaft straight up and down at a 180-degree angle, or maybe a slight bit, maybe about no more than probably about 5 degrees of lean, club shaft lean. So knowing this in mind, or keeping this in mind, now it's time to go over some easy ways to kind of get you guys the right amount of lean and kind of just get you guys thinking about what really creates shaft lean and how to create it that fits you. Alright guys, so now that you understand the relationship between club head speed and what type of dynamic loft you would like, let's kind of go over ways to individualize it to yourself. So we're going to take up the analogy again of that 7-iron swinging at 75 to 70 miles per hour. So for you guys, again, remember we want to have right around 180 degrees of basically shaft lean to start. So this first tip I'm going to use is probably the least, it takes the least amount of practice. So it's the way of least resistance. So from there, a lot of you guys are struggling or losing this angle or adding loft, are struggling kind of what I call the pivot. So I see you guys either moving excessively with your sternum off the golf ball, or it starts moving a little bit this way, or if you go down the line, you start moving off the ball or you start moving closer to the ball. You're just really struggling on keeping centered and making a good pivot. So for you guys, this video is going to really help. So I've done previous videos on this, so I would check them out, but I'm going to go into a quick little detail on it. So in the meantime, if you guys are shifting your sternum off the golf ball to your trail side footer to the right for right-handed golfers, I would suggest doing a certain thing at setup. I like to see the tilt with the left shoulder a little bit lower for the right-handed golfer. So let's take our sternum and our pelvis. If we could get our sternum 2 degrees in front of our pelvis, that's kind of what I'm talking about. So from there, if we get our pelvis 2 degrees, or sorry, excuse me, the sternum 2 degrees in front of a pelvis, and let's say we shift it back 4 to 5 degrees, that's going to get us at 178 or 177. Now what I've noticed is when players hit the ball from that 178 or 177, they typically have the right launch angles and they're going to make a good swing most of the time. So again, to do this, get that sternum 2 degrees in front of the pelvis and just make your normal swing. Now in the meantime, let's talk about pivot. Alright guys, so now you know pretty much, let's use the 7-iron example again. If you're at a 178 degree tilt, or the sternum is shifted like this, and you hit the golf ball from there, you're going to hit most likely a pretty good shot. So in the last little clip, I was telling you guys that I want that sternum tilted like that to compensate a little bit for your sway. Now let's talk about ways to kind of get rid of your sway and then eventually get that 178 with the left shoulder lower all the way back to what tilt it should be. So again, this is the center pivot. So when we're working on the center pivot, let's go to P2, which for me is hands level with the hips, so the first parallel. When I take it to P2, notice how my sternum's not moving off the golf ball or it's not moving this way. So a really easy drill to do this. I'm indoors. Go outside, get a golf ball, put it on your shadow on your head, and practice making a takeaway or getting to P2 when the hands are level to hips without your sternum shifting. Now if your sternum shifts, you're going to see the golf ball move. Now if you can do this, get to that P2 and make sure the golf ball is not lowering and it's not moving this way. That's a really easy telltale sign that you're making the correct pivot up until that point. Now from P2 to P3, which basically for me in my system is the hands to the shoulders, when the hands are traveling that distance from here, again, I like the hips to clear or go a little bit backwards, and the sternum is rotating, and at the same time, I have a little bit of an up move where I'm lifting up. So again, use that shadow and use the golf ball and try to get those things where you don't see your head moving around or you don't see it lowering. That's going to help you have more of a centered pivot and set yourself up to get the proper amount of shaft lean on the downswing for you. So the next part of this video, I'm going to talk about certain angles between the forearm of the right arm for a right-handed golfer, the back of the hand, and the club shaft. What type of angles you should look for at the top of your swing, and then kind of how the angles should decrease on the downswing. Alright guys, so now that you understand how to do a center pivot, you guys are getting better at it, you're using the shadow drill, you're not seeing your head move all over the place, you're feeling confident, you're looking good, now it's time to learn about certain angles on the downswing that's going to help you get the proper amount of shaft lean. So I'm indoors, so I'm going to grip up on the club just for this example because I don't want to hit the ceiling. But anyways, let's turn up to the top with our center pivot. Now, I would recommend looking at a mirror while doing this. So as you can see, up between the forearm and this fleshy pad of the right hand and the club shaft, there's about an angle there. So let's say this angle's at 110. Let's just throw a number out there. So if your angle's at 110, or you're at a certain angle, on the downswing, you're going to want to be slightly narrower when you get down to the last parallel right here. That's a great way to get the proper amount of shaft lean. Now, for you guys that swing it slower, I get you guys to have, again, remember that was 110? I get you guys to have a little bit less of an angle, or a little bit more, excuse me, a little more up too. So I'd get you at like a 125, probably to 130 type angle, and then I'm going to get you down to probably about maybe around 95 to 100 degree angle at the last parallel with this angle right here. So because when you guys don't swing as fast, you don't want to get more narrow because that's going to lead to most likely having less dynamic loft. And we know from the beginning of this video, the less dynamic loft you have with certain club head speeds, you're not going to optimize your numbers, you're not going to hit the ball quite as far as you can. So again, knowing that angle from the top of the swing to the last parallel and getting those angles correct would be crucial. I highly recommend getting this app called Huddle by Technique. It's great, it's free. I'll leave a description in the description below, and then check it out. And definitely recommend that. I have a video, I'm actually going to make a video on my new series, How to Become Your Own Golf Coach, on how to properly look at certain numbers on that Huddle by Technique. So anyways, go check it out. Alright guys, so now that you kind of understand the different angles between the top of the swing and the downswing, so basically, simply put, wide to a little bit more narrow, now it's kind of understand a little bit about wrist angles and how that can affect dynamic loft. So you've probably seen on video for DJ and John Rahm and some of those guys that bomb it, they're getting a lot of what we call flexion at the top of the swing. I've actually personally recommended this in How to Cure Your Slice. It's a really easy thing to do if you're left wrist for a right-handed golfer or your right wrist for a left-handed golfer, to kind of get your club face close to the arc and make it easier for the club face to be pointing for a right-handed golfer, pointing left to target line, and make sure that you hit a draw, or most likely for you guys that are out there, it'll be a pull hook at first, but then I go over the pat drills. But anyways, it's an easy way to loft the club. So for you faster club head swingers, again, as you get your center pivot and you get your certain angle at the top, if you add on that flexion of the left wrist and then get a pretty narrow, you're going to lower your dynamic loft quite a bit, and that's going to fit you. But going back to the analogy of the guys that swing from 70 to 75 miles per hour with the 7-iron, we're probably not going to want to get too much flexion of the left wrist. Now this is when it starts getting a little tricky, and this is where I need you guys to start filming. So it's not going to be the same for everyone. So let me explain what I mean by that. So when you get up to the top of the swing, a lot of it has to depend on what your toe is doing at the top. So if you see in this video, the toe is pointing down to the ground. So that club face is very open to the arc. So most players that get that open club face, when they get down to the last parallel, it's going to be open like this. And then when they hit the ball, the club face most likely is going to be pointing to the right, and that's why they slice the ball. So for you guys, feeling like you get a little bit more of that flexion would help lower your dynamic loft. Now, if you start seeing the ball going too low and you feel like you're losing distance, dial it back and get more into that flat left wrist position. Now, some of you guys are the opposite side of the spectrum where the toe is pointing pretty much horizontal and the face of the club is pointing up to the sky, more like a DJ. Now, from this position, some people do that with the flex wrist, but some people even have extension of the left wrist, which typically opens the face. So if your club face, again, is pointing up to the sky like that, and your wrist is cupped like that, it's probably time to change your grip. You probably got too strong of a grip. So I would check that out too, because if you're hitting it too low and you feel like you're not getting enough distance, you can always check how much lean you have on video, and if you have a bunch of lean, most likely it has to do with wrist angles. So again, wrist angles, again, relative to the toe position. So if you're hitting the ball too low and your club face is looking pretty much like that at the top of the swing where it's pointing up to the sky, check your wrist angles. If your wrist angles are an extension, definitely fix your grip. If your wrist angles are super flex like such, just get rid of some of that flex and that should cure it up. Same thing goes for the guys that have the toe position right here. If your wrists are in extension right here, just flatten it out to even flexion, that'll help. If you're in flexion and your club face is still open or the toe pointing down to the sky or down to the ground like such, definitely it's time to change your grip. So get a little bit stronger grip. Get that pretty much you want to see a little bit more knuckles in the left hand for a right-handed golfer, and you want those V's to be pointing to the right or the trail side shoulder. So again, there's a lot that goes into getting the proper amount of shaft lean, and I can't just do a video telling you guys what shaft lean is without trying to help you guys get the proper amount of shaft lean. So anyways, I hope this video helps. If you guys are already subscribed to my channel, thanks for the support. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you guys like these type of videos. If you guys are new to my channel, I try to give out a lot of detailed content on how to progress your game, because I know there's a lot of content out there on YouTube, but I think there's so much out there that can get confusing, and my channel, I'm just trying to make it readily available to you guys and make it a little bit easier to understand, and kind of like an instruction manual, just step by step by step by step. So anyways, guys, thanks for all the support. Please subscribe, leave a comment, like, and have a great day.